find myself watching YouTube a lot, and it's where I get most of my information, entertainment from. I find it to be a little bit more authentic. Nowadays, I guess the average everyday Joe has the ability to make their own channel with relatively low expense, and they can kind of share what's on their mind, what they've experienced in their world, or teach you or entertain you, whatever they want to do. And I gravitate towards that content. And I kind of find new people and spark interest, and then sometimes I really like, and I'll start binge watching kind of them. Kind of brings me up to speed on who they are and where they're coming from. Recently, I started following this guy, Gooby and Doobie. And he's a very gentle, kind-hearted Asian man and his little white 15-pound dog. Guess I can relate. I think my little dog's 12 pounds. But anyhow, he's he has an interesting background. I think he's up in Washington State. And I see him out in the trails, hiking in the woods, around the water, in nature, making talks. Well, he's his background. He's a neurosurgeon. He went to school at MIT, and then went to medical school at Duke, and then was a neurosurgeon, I guess, for 10 years. And now I guess he's around 40 years old. And I guess it's a year or so ago, he got a better understanding through his practice, through talking to patients, patient care, and doing just his observational science on some of the stuff he was doing, outcomes he was achieving, and started seeing that maybe, or questioning some of the stuff and its effectiveness on patient care. Some of the stuff that he was observing and some of the conclusions he came to was that sometimes patients are better off resting and their body heal, or going out in nature, exercising, changing your diet, things like that were very beneficial. So he started having this inner conflict, I guess, and the stress of trying to keep up with the workload that's put on you as a neurosurgeon and society's expectations that are put on you. So finally he got to a point, and I guess with his wife's support, said that he was going to step out of that field of work and speak boldly, I guess, against some of the stuff that he was doing, which, you do have to be bold, because you're somewhat burning bridges that he doesn't talk negative, he just questions, which I think is a healthy thing, to question things. And I find that interesting. Anyway, so he's if you want a new channel or something interesting or a different perspective on life, tune into his channel. Like I said, he's very calm voice, very kind-hearted man that's just out in the woods with his dog, reflecting back on life. And like a lot of us, is trying to figure out what our path is and what we're ultimately what we're guided to do. But sometimes I step back and look at the content creators that I'm drawn to. Initially, I was, me having some production background and being, sometimes you get caught into trying to make the flashiest, eye-catching, cool video. And over the last few years, I've been drawn more and more to people that are just walking and talking, or sitting in their car and talking. I guess what that is it's just, you've come to a point where someone just wants to share what's on their mind. And I'm always interested in learning or trying to see something from another person's perspective, to get a little insight. Right, wrong, doesn't matter. It's just a different way of looking at life. A lot of the people I see are out in nature. I guess that's one of the easiest things we can go do, is go for a walk out in the woods, step away from everything. And then life gets pretty simple. Simple's, nothing's wrong with simple. Maybe this is just my phase in life where I'm streamlining things. Not necessarily by choice, but I guess through life circumstances, you get twisted and turns, and you gotta let go of some stuff. And I think that's the only way you can gain more stuff, is letting go of the old stuff. And then realizing you don't really need a lot. And that's the key, I guess, is being happy within your skin, no matter where you're at or who you're with. Being happy with the person you are. You're looking at in the mirror. And make sure I'm not trying to change other people that don't want to be changed, or don't want to try to come across as preaching at other people. I'm just sharing my perspective currently as I see things, which ultimately, I'm sure they change. They'll change. As life changes, you change. So what's interesting, I listen to different people, different extremes, from Gooby and Dooby, someone who's kind of leaving some of the traditional mindset to living out in, sounds like a relatively expensive area. I think he said maybe his rent was $4,500 a month. And I think how he was kind of forced to buy a pepper out of one of the local real convenient grocery stores, and I think he paid $10 for the pepper or something. So anyway, he was talking about expense and cost and overpopulation and and I think a lot of that depends on your perspective and I guess what you're looking at in life, what you think you need, what you actually need. Although he's talking about the overpopulation, he's out in nature, and I rarely ever see anybody around him. I think when you live in a dense population area, you kind of start seeing that as a problem. If you were to get an airplane and fly across the country, you'd realize that there's a lot of empty space. Lots of empty space. But when you're in a city, you're thinking there's too many people. So I've had the opportunity to live small town, mid-town, big town, different parts of the country. I can see some of the challenges. Another guy I watch, he's left the States and now he's over in the Philippines. And he gives a cost breakdown of what his lifestyle looks like, what his money will get you. And I think he's got a studio apartment. Nice. It's right there, backs up to the ocean. It's got a nice pool, nice landscape, really nice. I think he may pay, maybe he pays $600, $600 a month or something like that. So another big expense is he has, instead of, I think he bought a scooter that he paid maybe $3,000 for. And then maybe his fuel expenses, maybe $50 a month. Food's a fraction of the cost. And a lot of times the quality's better. So a lot of times that helps me sometimes get a reset because of our materialistic, highly commercialized society that we live in the States, to where, in our subconscious or whatever, I'm thinking I need that Lincoln like McConaughey has, and I want to be cool like him and drive that Lincoln. If I had that Lincoln, that might be the difference maker for me. And I guess that's what we're bombarded with, all these commercials, television shows, different things with all these material objects that plant seed in our mind that these things will ultimately make you happy. But in reality, what I see, this guy's name is Jogo Travel or Jogo Explorer. Good. Anyways, he's from the Carolinas, and I guess he went through a separation with divorced his wife and had to start over. And starting over is rough. But what I see him doing is trying to make the best of a bad situation. And I guess if you're going to start over, why not start over in a different country? Try something else. And I binge watched his stuff from the early sessions, and just a very energetic guy that's always got a smile on his face, and wants to enjoy life and find nice people to share their experience with. And I appreciate him sharing his videos. Seeing an alternative path is critical. And sometimes we get in these dark times in our life where we don't see any other way out, and we don't think we can compete, or don't think we, and a lot of these things are just things we have in our mind. It isn't reality. It's just what we think reality is, that we need all this stuff, or need all these people, it's the trick. And when I'm speaking this to myself as I'm self-evaluating, reevaluating, because I've had stuff, lost stuff, lost stuff through the ups and downs. But being okay either way I think that's important. I had a buddy, Mr. Herman Wells, was an old woodworker. He had a wood shop next to my house when I lived in Cedar Key. And I asked him, he was 70, 75, 76. And he experienced a lot of ups and downs. He was a commercial fisherman. He made nets, built boats, bird dog boats, and had been in that area for most of his life. So he saw a lot of the changes. And then in the mid-90s, they had a net ban. So all the commercial fishermen were no longer able to make a living. So that put a lot of people out of business. Some people started clamming. He started building furniture, outdoor furniture. Outdoor furniture and picture frames. So in talking to him, I asked him, I said, you've seen a lot of stuff. What is the difference between days when you were a little kid, versus today's society? What is the biggest difference? And he said, it was much tougher times back then. Everyone worked. You worked hard and you got paid very little. He said, but what we did get, we appreciated. And he was saying nowadays he doesn't think a lot of people appreciate the stuff they have because it's relatively easy to get stuff. So he told me a story about him and one of his cousins or somebody, I think, going to work with his grandmother out in the cotton fields. And what he said that she would find a big oak tree out in the middle of the field, put a blanket out there, and they'd have a jug of water and a little plate of biscuits, and they would get to eat. That would be their little snacks while his mom his grandmother worked in the fields picking cotton. So that's some labor-intensive work. But that was a fond memory. That was a good memory in his mind of spending time with his grandmother, or working, or entertaining himself while his grandmother worked. But he appreciated that little biscuit. He said they usually put a thumb in the middle of the biscuit and pour a little syrup in there, and that would be their little treat. Nowadays, I go to Walmart and I try to be frugal. I have to be frugal right now. There's not much of a choice. But I see some people with these, I've got literally a bag of lettuce and bananas, maybe avocado. Going to check out. This lady in front of me has got buggy overflowing, bottom rack flat full. Just gobs of stuff. And I think about that. Does she really appreciate that? Is she grateful for that? I don't know. I'm not to judge, but I would guess that's a lot of different. You're going to have a little bit different mindset than the lady did that was out there humping it all day, picking cotton, and earn enough money to make some biscuits and feed her kids. Just different. I guess I can't say one's right or wrong, just different. That's what Mr. Herman said. He said, a lot of the new people moving into Cedar Key with money, making their second homes, second, third home, rental properties. Well, the tourism is what brought people in that bought the chairs, bought the picture frames that he sold. So without those people, he wouldn't have a business. So he was grateful. He was wise enough to realize that it was different times. Not necessarily one better than the other. And I guess that's the key, is not having absolute, hey, this is better, that's bad, this is good, that's bad, to just sometimes just a different way of looking at things, different time. But I missed my little talks with Mr. Herman. He passed, I guess, maybe a year or so ago, 2 years ago, prior to our big hurricane. So I'm glad he wasn't there to be part of that craziness. But I do miss going by and talking to him. He was just a kind-hearted man that would spend time with anybody that pull up and visit with him. And I think it's important when you find people that are willing to share some of their life, that you give them the ear, listen to their story, allow them to teach you some things.